All right, good morning, folks. We're going to get started. Thank you all so much for coming to the Easthampton Council on Aging Forum on housing and older adult issues specifically. Thank you to our presenters and our information tablers, our staff and volunteers, our co-sponsors, Eastworks, who lent us the space for free, Easthampton Media for filming. I just want to call your attention to a few key details before we get started. So first of all, if there's an emergency, you can head outside the fire exit and out that way. Bathrooms, there's a little bathroom here, a bigger bathroom down the hall, and lunch is coming at 11:45 a.m. When you signed in, you were given an index card, hopefully for questions. So what we're doing is you can write down a question for us. We won't get to all of them, maybe 5 or 6 questions, and we'll sort through the questions with our people who are great with housing issues. And all of your other questions I will take back, and we will try to get answers to them and publish them at some point soon. So if your question doesn't get answered, don't fret. Next on our agenda is when lunch comes, we don't have enough seats for everyone for lunch, so please save the table seats for those who really need a table. You know who you are and demand a table. And the rest of you will just eat standing up or in your seats. Thank you so much for understanding. And I just want to also say that we won't get to every issue today. For example, we're mostly focusing on the development of housing, people's common issues around housing. If you have questions about homelessness, people who are unhoused, people who don't have any home, that's a topic for a future forum, but please write down your questions. We're sorry we couldn't cover everything today. So to get things going here, Mayor LaChapelle is on her way, and I'm just gonna keep going and talking, and she'll be here soon. So first of all, we're going to talk about who are the older adults in Massachusetts who have housing issues and what are common housing issues and some of the solutions the state has identified to address people's housing needs. And we have Haley Wood from the Massachusetts Councils on Aging. Haley, you can come up. So Haley was formerly the Hadley Council on Aging Director, and before that, one of our very own outreach workers in Easthampton at our senior center. And then I'm going to have Haley introduce our next guest, Emily Cooper. So come on up here.
Thanks.
Thank you, Haley.
Sure.
All right.
Start up, okay. Hi everyone, Stella, hey, nice to see you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm so pleased to see so many people gathered here today to learn, think, be together around the issue of housing, particularly housing as it affects older adults in Western Massachusetts and housing scarcity that probably some of you are all too familiar with. I imagine that there are people here who have some lived experience with housing insecurity, and there are many people who have experience dedicating a lot of their professional energy to meeting the needs that they see and sort of coping with the complex array of issues that come up around this that sometimes are unsolvable problems, but in the big picture, everyone devoted to this wants to be a part of the solution. So thank you so much. Cindy did introduce me, but again, I'm Haley Wood. I work with the Massachusetts Councils on Aging, which is the membership organization for all the councils on aging, also known as senior centers in the state. And so my focus with MCOA is economic security and also providing support and professional development opportunities to outreach coordinators like Ashley at the ECOA. And I have to repeat that I was an outreach coordinator for the Easthampton Council on Aging for a couple of years, and I love that job, and It really gave me an appetite for digging into some of these tough problems. So in 2018 and 2019, when I was the outreach coordinator for the Easthampton Council on Aging, the first day on the job, my first client was someone who was living in his van in Easthampton. It was winter. He was heating his van with propane, and he also was low literacy, so that added another layer of difficulty to assisting him. But I had a real sense of panic and a feeling like, how can I ever help this person? And I will say right now, I didn't succeed. We saw each other on a regular basis for 2 years, worked on applications, looked at various public and private housing opportunities, looked at single room occupancy. None of these things were suitable for him for various reasons, and of course, one of the major obstacles was being low income and not being able to afford the rent of a market rate one-bedroom apartment in the area. I know this is a very familiar story to many of you. So he's one of the people that I keep in my mind when I do this work. I have a few, and their particular issues and barriers are ever present in my mind as I think about bigger picture ways to go at this together. And I don't know, hopefully many of you are aware of this, but maybe not all of you are aware of the level to which Council on Aging staff members routinely, daily help people who are housing insecure. So folks who have a home but might be in danger of being evicted, might be facing difficulties in maintaining their home, maybe they need supports that they don't have in place yet, and that's where home care comes in. Hi, Highland Valley people, always good to see you. And I just want to mention too that I personally believe that home care services and money management are probably the biggest strategy that we have for keeping people safely housed. And I would love to see the funding for that increase and the number of workers who provide that direct service increase and the way we pay them increase. And for me, that's a huge key. I would advise anyone who can to stay home and make the modifications necessary to stay home, given the scarcity of other kinds of housing that's available. So there's a lot of creative problem solving that happens amongst COA staff members, particularly the outreach coordinators. And in Easthampton, you're also so lucky to have a social worker who is part of the municipal staff, who is, I'm sure, a huge ally to Ashley. And they encounter many difficult situations and bring every bit of imagination that they have to bear on them. So COA staff members help people in insecure housing situations by helping to connect them with friends and family, helping sometimes to reestablish relationships that have gotten frayed. They connect them with agencies who can help them pay bills, or in hoarding cases, they can help people with decluttering, with getting access to the kind of behavioral health supports that they might need in order to sort of get it, to move ahead with that particular disability. COAs also assist with housing searches, and the most common thing they probably do in regards to housing searches for low-income older adults is help people with CHAMP applications, so to help folks access housing authority housing. And as you, I'm sure, know, Massachusetts is blessed with many units of local housing authority apartments, and it's not the be-all and end-all. There are problems. The CHAMP application, I think, has introduced a big administrative barrier on local housing authorities. I've heard that a lot from various housing authority managers, but nonetheless, this is frequently the first place to go to apply to be considered for a unit that would be affordable, typically not more than 30% of someone's income. So that's definitely a first step for many COA staff members, helping people for sure. There are other tools. There are tax deferrals for homeowners, and the largest percentage, people older adults are, most of them in the country own their own homes. So that's another element to be considering when we think about the solution for increasing housing stock, increasing the ability for people to downsize, move to smaller places, have the diversity of housing available to them so that they're not sort of stuck trying to maintain a home that's too big, that isn't really the best fit for someone who has decreasing mobility, things like that. But there are existing programs that can help people continue to afford their homes, like reverse mortgages that I think are often thought of as, ooh, never do that. I'm not so sure that's the way to approach that. And tax deferrals and other opportunities to save in one area so that the cost of your housing and the cost of modifying your housing can be in control. There are programs for 0% loans to modify homes, to make them accessible, and to do rehabilitation to replace systems for homes that really could use a lot of work, but as we know, that's very expensive. But there are systems in place to help people with that. So I would just encourage everyone to become increasingly literate about those options. COA staff members also help people who are considered chronically homeless or not chronically homeless, but they find themselves unhoused. Chronically homeless means having been unhoused for at least a year. And I definitely have encountered folks in that situation, and they are often assisted by the 3-county continuum of care, which is a program within Community Action Pioneer Valley. That system that I want you to be aware of coordinates an administrative process called coordinated entry, where they keep a list of people who fit that criteria, and different advocates from various housing-affiliated agencies in our region come together on a monthly basis to literally try to match the names on the list with available units. The Community Action Pioneer Valley is the one in our Western Mass region that does that. There are others in Hampden County, and I'm sure counties all over the state. But I just want you to know that chronically homeless people have access to a system that is actively trying to lower the barriers to finding a permanent solution to being unhoused. This is really an I statement, I have worked with staff members in local shelters because at times there have been situations when the only semi-solution at my disposal was a warm handoff to a shelter. I don't think that's terribly unusual. Jack Myers, the director of programs at Craig's Doors in Amherst, which is a really wonderful shelter full of competent, hardworking professionals who are heroically saving lives. It's a shelter that many organizations in Hampshire County rely on in emergency situations. And Jack shared this with me when I asked him to reflect a little bit on what it's like to serve older adult homeless people. He wrote, there is an extreme shortage of affordable housing for people who need assisted living arrangements. Many of our 60-plus folks need a much higher level of care than we can provide and would not be able to safely live in a standard apartment. They need something that is ADA accessible, along with staff who can assist them with carrying out basic functions. These are almost impossible to place a client in, as they are always full with a never-ending wait list. For case managers, finding affordable housing in Massachusetts is already hard enough, never mind making sure it can accommodate a mobility-impaired senior who needs daily supports. So as we know, being old with a limited income that is not keeping pace with rent is a barrier. And in addition to that barrier, having increasing disabilities becomes yet another barrier. And you probably are aware that the most common disability among people over 65 is mobility impairment. So that's another reason to have awareness of programs that might help make your home more accessible with ramps, grab bars, and the like. So this is a term you're going to hear a lot today, I'm sure, lack of housing diversity. the lack of smaller homes for downsizing, and housing that includes crucial services. Towns and cities like Easthampton that have completed age-friendly community assessments unfailingly identify the lack of housing options as a topmost concern of older adults in their communities. Everyone is clamoring for change in this regard. And I would also, as a strategy, advise you, if you want to advocate for increased housing diversity in your community, in particular for older adults, find out if your community has a housing production plan. Read their priorities, read their recommendations, then read your age-friendly assessment and read what they have to say about housing being a #1 concern, and come together around those issues. Those are overlapping, supporting voices that can bring people who are interested in the planning process with people who are interested in age and dementia-friendly work in the state. And I think that there can be some cross-fertilization of energy and commitment with those tools. The economic reality of aging in Massachusetts is something that probably all of us are thinking about. I think about it all the time. The incomes of older adults in the state shrink after retirement. That's not a mystery. And people are living longer. That's another element to consider. So that's great. However, rents and property taxes continue to rise, and older adults are outliving their savings. I recently read a really good study called prepared by the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard University. They came out with a report. There are about 1 million reports. You can read about all this stuff. And this one is Housing America's Older Adults in 2023. And I just pulled a few facts. So remember, this is national. It 100% reinforces everything we're saying about Massachusetts and Western Massachusetts. Most older adults live in their own homes. In 2021, that was 88.2% of people over 65. The number of households headed by an adult 80 and over in the US will more than double between 2021 and 2040 to nearly 17 million. So yes, we do all know too that the percentage of the population that is older is increasing pretty rapidly. The number of older households with cost burdens has been rising for 2 decades. I think cost burdens here is referring to the basic formula that if you are spending 30 or more % of your income on housing, you are cost burdened. People are routinely spending more than that, up to 50% or more. Overall, 43% of older renters in 2022, this one really popped out at me, have less than $1,000 in cash savings. So I find that really scary. Homelessness is on the rise among older adults, and many believe it's the fastest growing demographic of homelessness in the country. Older renter households are more likely to be headed by people of color, so there is a racial and element to this, and people who identify as African American or Latinx are disproportionately experiencing homelessness compared to their white neighbors. These trends tell us that more housing diversity and permanent supportive housing, which is a model of housing there's not a clear accessibility pathway for older adults to access this kind of housing. It's not assisted living, it's not living in a nursing home. It is living in a unit with staff nearby who can help you with things like personal care or case management or behavioral health. This is a model of housing that does exist, but as far as I can tell, there isn't a way beyond slipping into chronic homelessness that kind of housing, which I really believe in, is accessible to older adults who are simply reached the point where they're no longer able to thrive independently in their own home, but they're not ready for a nursing home, and that's a lot of people. A couple of things are giving me hope right now, like seeing all of your faces and really just feeling grateful for the interest in this topic and the kind of organizing like Cindy has been doing to make this kind of thing, this kind of conversation, a public dialogue that everyone's taking part in. The other is and I won't get into this, and I'm just about to close, we've got experts who will talk about this, but the Affordable Homes Act, otherwise known as the Housing Bond Bill, which has been making its way through the legislative process at the State House and currently sits with the Ways and Means Committee. This is something that I've been following, probably several of you have been following it, and it's a very meaningful document that could really be a once-in-a-lifetime game changer for improving the housing situation in our state. So you'll hear others speak of it today, and our next speaker, Emily Cooper, is the EOEA's Chief Housing Officer, and she will share her knowledge with existing models of housing, also things that you might not know about, and various tenancy protection resources that also might be new to you. So come on up, Emily.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for that introduction. How you guys doing this morning? Good? Yeah, you're still awake, so that's good. We know it's better to go before lunch than after lunch, right? Yeah. So thank you for having me here today. Thank you for that introduction, Haley. As Haley mentioned, I'm Emily Cooper, and I work actually at the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, so at the state level on issues related to housing. I also happen to work at Mass Health, which is the state Medicaid agency. Also on issues related to housing. So they asked me to come here and talk about some things that we're trying to do at the state level to address some of the issues that Haley mentioned. I just want to start off by saying that both of those agencies, we don't build housing. We don't have money. We don't pay to go swing a hammer or pay somebody's rent. And so I like to say, if you build it, we will come, because we are the services end of things. And so I spend a lot of time making marriages between the housing and the services and trying to make that work. Here in, across the state, as you mentioned, there's probably about 110,000 affordable senior housing. And when I say affordable, I'm talking about it got money from some government to make the rents a little bit lower. It may not be affordable enough for you. It may be too affordable for you because it's a spectrum, but there's about 110,000 apartments. I'd say there's a couple of hundred here in Easthampton. We have the Great Treehouse Project. I saw somebody walking around with a treehouse sweatshirt, which is sort of an innovative model of affordable housing for older adults mixed with families who have children from the foster system. We have the Housing Authority, the Easthampton Housing Authority. Anybody here from there? Thank you for coming, everything you guys do. You also have Orchard View, I think. Anybody heard of Orchard View? It's an apartment building in town, and College Highway is another apartment building in town. Those are all senior affordable housing in that they are targeted to older adults. In order to be in them, you need to be a certain age or older, and your income needs to be a certain amount. And then when you live there, you get either a lower rent or help paying your rent. But those are probably a couple of 300 apartments. I'm guessing it's way not enough. And so what you're going to hear about later today, and you've already heard mention of, is the bond bill, which, at the state we're encouraging you all, because you all are going to talk to your legislatures. They get to say whether or not they support it. Without more housing of all kinds for all incomes, we're at a loss, right? We're just behind the 8 ball. And so whether it's housing that's affordable to you, affordable to somebody else, more housing will help with the overall crunch that we're all feeling. If people can't buy a home, they're staying in that rental housing. That means you can't move into that rental housing. So it's a very cyclical thing. Some of the things that we're doing is that what we've discovered is that in those apartment buildings that I mentioned, if you have something called a resident service coordinator, which is kind of a cross between, like, if you're in New York City, your doorman and a concierge and your trusted best friend who is in the building, and they're there and they're helping you. They're going to bring in, they're going to have Highland Valley come in and do a yoga class, and they're going to, maybe have some computer programming, or maybe they're just going to be in the lobby, and when Haley walks by, they're going to say, "Haley, are you okay? You're limping. Are you okay? Is there anything I can help you with?" And she'll say, "Oh, well, I've been trying to get in to see my doctor." And they'll sit down and they'll have a conversation and try and help them meet that need. Or they might say, hey, Julia, she's always hanging out in the lobby. I haven't seen her in a while. I'm going to go check on her in her apartment. And those folks save healthcare money. Research has shown that if you have one of those people in your building, that the people who live there are less apt to go to the hospital, to have an ambulance come, and when they're in the hospital, to stay there less time. So I work for a healthcare agency, so I'm like, wow, we want to, that not only does it save healthcare money, but it keeps people healthier. Why don't we do more of that? So we are trying, at the state level, we have at Elder Affairs, we have something called the Supportive Housing Program. I know Highland Valley is here. They partner with the Westfield Housing Authority, for example, and they have staff who do this sort of thing there. We're working with Medicaid healthcare agencies and asking them, hey, you guys are saving money from this. Do you want to, maybe you can support these kinds of things that are going on in housing. So we're trying to bring services into these housing apartment buildings so that people can stay there longer. So that there's somebody around who's kind of paying attention, who will say, I don't understand this letter I got from my doctor. Can you explain it to me? Might speak the language that you speak, whatever it may be, to keep you in that housing longer. The second thing that we're doing involves two of our tables over here. We have Trinity and Mercy PACE programs, and there's a third one out here called Summit PACE. PACE stands for the Program for All-Inclusive Care of the Elderly, and it is a program that I like to say is very robust. It is for people who might otherwise have to go to a nursing home or an assisted living or something like that, but they're going to bring services to you. And they can do everything but pay your rent. So if you need some small modification made to your home so that you can stay there, they can do that. If you need somebody to stop by once a day to remind you to take your medicine, they can do that. If you need somebody to stop by twice a day, they can do that. And they would probably keep coming until as much as you need it. What we have seen is PACE and housing has created a nice partnership. So if you're in your apartment, if you're in your home, you can have PACE there. But we've also seen, for example, local housing authorities, Fitchburg, Leominster, Ludlow, Boston, Cambridge, Stoughton, I got about 10 of them, where they have said, hey, I'm going to take these apartments over here and make them for PACE folks, and it allows for really robust services. It's almost like everything in assisted living, but it's affordable because the housing is affordable. And then the services are affordable. If you're on Medicaid, they're free. So, it's a nice partnership. In fact, in West Springfield, which isn't too far from here, there's a whole building that was developed with resources from the state where everybody there is on PACE. And they don't pay for the services, and then they pay a percentage of their income for the housing. It looks and smells a lot like an affordable assisted living, except it's housing and it's services, and they're just partnering together. So we're trying to do more of those. We've expanded PACE to be almost statewide. We are marketing PACE, and we are actively talking to housing developers about, hey, this is your local PACE program. If you're building new housing, you may want to talk to them. Or pairing housing authorities together. You did this with PACE, explain it to how you did it to this other housing authority, so that might be something they'd want to do. Sadly, I was just talking to my Highland Valley folks. We do have a lot of folks who are losing their housing. Right, and that gets to a point where they might be facing eviction, and due to something related to behavior or a disability or a medical condition, they're forgetting to pay their rent, but it's because they have an early onset dementia or whatever it may be. And so we do have a very strong eviction prevention program. In the western part of the state, it is run by the Berkshire County Regional Housing Authority. Even though that says Berkshire County and you're not in Berkshire County, they do serve this area. And we have actively worked to make sure that they have enough money and enough ways to support their work to meet the demand. And what they do is they embed themselves in housing court. So if you're ever, hopefully never, go through the process of being evicted, at some point you're going to wind up in front of a judge. And that judge out here will say to you, if you want to work with Berkshire County, we can stop this eviction and try and work with them and see if they can solve this so you don't either have to lose your housing or they can help you move to another housing. And that has been really successful. Of course, people have to want to do that and have to choose to agree to be part of that, and some people, you know, at that point are really angry and they might not want to. But if you ever, I would not wish this on anybody, but if you knew of anybody who's being evicted, you want to make sure that you're referring them to the Berkshire County Regional Housing Authority. So I would also encourage all of you, or everybody, it's a weird place to go, but if you are on Medicaid, then your Medicaid, if you are enrolled in something that sounds like a health plan, it sounds like Senior Whole Health or United Healthcare or what's that? Commonwealth Care Alliance is a big one out here, Fallon, things like that. They also have resources to help you put in grab bars. They could, if you needed a ramp, they might do that. Depending on what your situation is in your housing, they might come out and be able to make some of those modifications. Again, not at no cost to you, but you just have to know to ask. And we don't think of that. We don't think of the health insurance plan coming out to our house and doing those things. So I want to make sure people know that that is definitely something that can happen. I think I was sort of told I was like a lightning kind of thing, so I talked really fast, and I think there'll be opportunities for questions later. But I want to again say that we just don't have enough. I mean, that's what I think all your questions are going to be. I want to stay in Easthampton. I want to sell my house and downsize, and there's no place to live, right? That's going to be the major question. How do we have more? Can you build more? And so that's what you're going to hear this afternoon about, which is if we get this bond bill or the Affordable Homes Act passed, it will create a situation where more housing can be built. We are short 200,000 apartments or housing units across the state right now. Not all of those being affordable or subsidized, just 200,000. And so in order to start building those, we need to pass this bond bill to make that go forward. So if we pass it and they build it, we will come. I will bring the forces with me to bring the PACE program and the home care program at Highland Valley and resident service coordinators. Hi.
Hi. Wow, that's a lot. Exciting. I'm Nicole LaChapelle. I'm the mayor of Easthampton, very proudly so, and I was late this morning, and I have members of my family in the audience who are not surprised. But here I am. Thank you so much, Emily, Haley, for the information, and also thank you for the agencies who have continually supported Easthampton seniors, and to see the staff of COA bring you more and more into our community is fabulous. And we've had a lot of positive support and also comments from the folks who use COA, but also who need to problem solve with many issues of transitioning and how to access programs. It's really been impressive and really exciting going forward. I do want to also point out Councilor Connie Denham, who was here. There she is. And yeah, Lindsay took your seat? Okay. All right, you're good. But also, great to reach out to council. Also, Lindsay Saluka is here from my office. If all else fails, or you just need to make a solid connection to the COA or one of these programs, call Lindsay or Connie. So that information is on our website. Before we go to lunch and whatnot, I want to just talk about some of the outreach, but also programs that the city, from my office, has promoted and are trying to build. And I'm going to try to go fast. So if there's something that I'm saying or we're adding, and Haley and Emily, if you want to jump in and say, look, this is how it connects, that would be wonderful. Also, I can say very candidly, I knew Haley when She started in Easthampton, and it's fabulous to have somebody who knows Easthampton as a real decision maker coming back, but I know you never left us. So the first thing I am going to shamelessly ask for your support. So one, we put forward a provision for an appropriation to City Council for $600,000 to go to a tax relief fund that we've created. Why I'm looking for support for that is that the City Council votes on it, and that provides tax relief to every property owner in Easthampton. We've done it a couple of years in a row. This is a really big ask of City Council, but we've watched, first of all, just overall, the cost of living rise and rise again, but also our tax rate. So you see a nice low number. It goes down every year. But the value of our homes and property keep going up. So Councilor Denham, if you'd like to touch base with the councilor and urge her to vote yes on that, that would be wonderful. Also, sidewalks. We've spent a lot of money and time on sidewalks. We have a great advocate in Representative Dan Carey, who has put forward an earmark to improve some sidewalks and also access to downtown from Adams Street. So we're working on that, and Dan is a fantastic advocate. So thank you in advance. I know it's a treacherous, long process, but thank you. Craig's Door, that was just mentioned up here. Is someone here from there? Yes, awesome, great. So Liz Cliff, our social worker, has really educated me on the importance of Craig's Door. We're about to, or we have signed an MOU for 3 years to provide services and connect them with Craig's Door. I really can't take any credit for that. It's all Liz. So if you want details, talk to Liz. Also, I want to mention co-responders. So we have 2 co-responders that work with the police. So if you're not sure what to do, or you're in a situation that's really scary, challenging, or unknown, call 911. And we have 2 co-responders who are trained in connecting folks with services, know about or can connect you with places like Highland Valley or a community program that are doing upgrades to folks' living spaces that make it just a little easier to get around. The Veteran Wellness Coalition really just started 110%. I know Tom is over there, our veterans agent, really excited about that program, one, because it just brings a whole bunch of service providers together specifically for our veteran community, and we were able in this coming budget to increase Tom to full-time, which is fantastic. I've also learned from Tom that it's not just about state benefits, but the resources the VA have. We've really underutilized them, and we're stepping up via Tom to get the word out. Senior Tax Work-Off, a small program that we have that City Council actually put forward. We're working to figure out how that can work better for our senior population, but also thank you to the seniors who do participate. They have really been filling a lot of gaps for us throughout government and through our departments. We are in the beginning of, baby step, of starting a committee and a process for a new senior center here in Easthampton. I see member Tom Brown, and I apologize if I'm not recognizing everyone else, but what's going on right now is there's a mayoral ad hoc committee that is rounding up all the information for us around what money is available, what folks want. We have a couple of studies that go back a couple of years and freshening that up. From their work, we go into a formal committee, something like a school building committee if you're were involved in that process or went to a a public hearing on that again in this year's budget. Councilor Denham. I have asked for funding for that ad hoc committee, but as well as the formalized committee, which we will put out to the public. And if you're interested in participating, I think it's going to be competitive, but obviously we need folks who access these services on it. And I want to make sure in the forward that it's funded to get the work done and proper outreach. We've also, from a lot of input from the community, including COA and folks over 55, I think I can be a member, right? I'm 57, Mom? I'm 57, yeah, I'm 57, and my mom's 77. Yeah, so come on, it's easy math. But I will, so we shifted almost $510,000 to the library to expand their operations and outreach and connection with all the services while they shift to a more accessible building on Main Street. And that was really a feedback from this community and others. There is a lot going on. I actually could go on for a long time, but I'm not, because I'm before lunch. It is overwhelming. I was very overwhelmed when I heard what was available from Elder Affairs and MCOA. Please reach out to the Senior Center, whether you want to be a formal member or just need to connect to get some tax help, to understand how to connect to state and federal benefits, to figure out what's going on with housing if you're in a dire situation or want to make a shift. Maybe you want to contact the COA or somebody in city government for a neighbor, for a relative who's really trying to navigate a robust but very complex system. If you would like to, I'm just going to call out people who can help you and make decisions. You have questions about your excise tax, your property tax. I want to talk about abatements. Our assessor, Martha Lamy, is here, and in the course of public disclosure, which we have one on file, she's also my sister-in-law. So if I can connect you. So this is the team within government. We have great partners in the state, our state rep and our state senator. I see a former city council president, longtime city council member who remains active, Joe McCoy. Thank you for your service, but also understanding the issues and services in this room. I'm going to flip the thing. So I would ask for some comment, if no pressure, around what we've laid out from the city and what were our logical connections with the programs and services that you just talked about to kind of do a full circle.
Can I just mention something?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm really pleased. Okay, this worked. Yes, live. Easthampton is a community that permits accessible dwelling units by right. That's a wonderful tool for increasing housing at no cost to the state. And Northampton has the same situation. So you're in great shape with that. I wanted to just make sure that I acknowledge that as a wonderful tool for increasing options. And yay you, Easthampton.
We're
really fantastic and awesome.
Yeah,
Emily.
That's what I was thinking, actually. Thank you. And I was also thinking that it must be fun at like your Thanksgiving table and stuff that,
Yeah.
leaving work and going, yeah. So, I mean, you guys know your community really well, and it's awesome to hear some of the things that are going on. I would love to make sure that the co-responders are aware of all the things that got mentioned, including like the folks out in Berkshire County, even though they sound far away, they're not, and they have presence here. Because if they're seeing things, if they show up, I've worked with fire departments who actually have laminated cards so they could tell if something is hoarding or not and who to call. And it's sort of like, this is hoarding, this is just my 17-year-old son, and what's the difference? So how to get those first responders really aware and able to make appropriate referrals is awesome, including involving protective services from Highland Valley as well.
Great, thank you both. And again, just keeping in the line and form of calling out people who can help. Maybe Liz, our social worker, could put together a quick roundtable with our friends in fire and police. I know there's a lot of already back and forth, but let's make sure that they have the resources. So, lunch. Lunch is at 11:50. The food, the big boxes, are over there. During lunch, we encourage people to grab an index card and put some questions down if you have them. We're having another lightning round panel a little bit during lunch, after lunch. So please, we want your questions. If we don't get to your question during this session, someone in the city will get back to you. And maybe Cindy, all the answers and questions, we could post it on the website. Fantastic. I'm gonna wrap up here with one more, statement of gratitude and also amazement. The COA staff in Easthampton, just stunning. And this forum is one of a kind. It's the first. I hope it's one of many. We're just so grateful for everything you do and really juggle all these different options for our seniors. Just forever grateful. I will, one more person I'm going to shout out to is Jana, who heads up our affordable housing partnership and has been doing an amazing job advocating for what housing should look like in the future for Easthampton. We've got a lot before City Council now, Councilor Denham. So we would love to, if people have feedback, please seek out Jana during this. Okay, and that's it, says Cindy, and it's good to just follow her lead. So lunch is to the right, cards are over by the registration table, and also our service agencies are here to answer your questions or just grab a card if something comes up. So thank you all for attending and coming and sharing this afternoon with us. Yes, oh yeah, that's great. So when you write your questions, you can put them up here or give them to anyone of the staff member, or when I'm done, I'll come get it. Okay. Enjoy lunch. We'll be back in 25 minutes.
And we will open the next phase of this forum. And what we're going to be talking about, if Jana Tetra would come up too. Jana from the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership of Easthampton is going to come up, introduce herself real quick, and she's going to moderate. Keith and Matt, come on down here, Keith, these two seats right here. And she's going to moderate this section about statewide housing planning efforts and how you fit into that as voters and residents. And then she's going to give you a quick rundown of housing projects in Easthampton that are coming up. Thank you, Jana.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jana Tatro. Thank you. I am the chair of Easthampton's Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. In my day job, I'm also the associate director of programs for Community Action Pioneer Valley. I am very excited to introduce our two panelists. Keith Ferry, who's the president and CEO of Wayfinders. Wayfinders is our regional housing organization. They do all things housing. They serve Hampden and Hampshire County. They do emergency family shelter. They do emergency rental assistance, Section 8 rental assistance. They build affordable housing. They do first-time homebuyer classes. They are our go-to spot for all things affordable housing. Also, Matt Noyes, who's here from Citizens Housing and Planning Association, otherwise known as CHAPA. CHAPA is a statewide organization, so Matt drove all the way from Boston area to be with us today. CHAPA is a statewide advocacy organization on affordable housing. They do research and training and lots of advocacy to build more affordable housing here in Massachusetts. I do not have prepared questions because these two are really the experts, and I'm just going to let them talk for the next 20 minutes. But if you don't answer a question that I think that you should have, then I will jump in and ask it. All right.
That sounds like a trick. Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here with you again. I'm Keith Ferry from Wayfinders, and I want to acknowledge my colleagues who are here. Lots of information about what Wayfinders does is over there at the table. So hopefully you can stop by and learn a little bit more about what we do on a day-to-day basis. What I'd like to talk about, and what Matt and I think we'll tag team on, is around the need and the opportunity for all of us around housing. Sometimes people put on it affordable housing, and I'll even speak to that one. Affordable housing is housing you can afford, right? At the end of the day, when we're talking about it from a specific type of housing, there are income restricted housing, and it's restricted because of the resources that are subsidized or grants or other things that are given to projects to keep it affordable. That's essentially what affordable housing is about. And it's done that way because it's really expensive to build housing today. And there is such great need across the Commonwealth, but I want to talk about the need here in the Pioneer Valley. In 2021 and 2022, Wayfinders worked with the UMass Donahue Institute to do a housing study for the three counties here, Hampden, Hampshire, and Franklin counties. And the reason we did it is because we were trying to understand the changing housing market. We initiated the study before COVID, but it took on new relevance during COVID. And one of the things that we found lots of data, and I'm happy to share that with you, and we can make sure that you have that access to that. One of the things that we found was that we had a housing supply gap here in the region. At the time in 2021, it was 11,000 units, and Donahue Institute projected it would grow to 19,000 units by 2025, so next year. That's assuming we did nothing. And it really inspired us to think about what we could do to create more housing. We already develop and manage housing. Here in Easthampton, we have Parsons Village, which we manage. And we manage lots of units around the region, over 800 and soon to be over 1,000. And one of the things that we recognized in order to do more is that we needed more resources. And Senator Vilas is going to talk about this, but every 5 years in Massachusetts, there's an opportunity for more resources to build housing. It's called the Housing Bond Bill, otherwise known as the Affordable Homes Act. And I told him I wouldn't steal his thunder, so I won't say too much more about that. But we're at a critical moment right now in terms of the housing future for not only Massachusetts, but for this region. We need to build more, we need to create more, and we need to preserve the housing we have, from the homes that we have to the apartment buildings that are already here. Why do I say that? One of the other things that we learned from the housing study is that we have some of the oldest housing stock in the Commonwealth. That's no surprise to many of us who live here. I live in Amherst. My house was built in 1835. I know what old is. But many of our other units were all pre-1970 from many communities and haven't seen a lot of reinvestment. When you don't reinvest in your housing stock, it goes into functional obsolescence and potentially is not useful going forward. So we can't continue to lose housing, and we are losing some units here and there, but we also need to build more, and we need to build not only for today, but for the future of our communities. Many of our communities are seeing some signs, some significant warning signs, things that we thought maybe were things in the past people would use to oppose housing. In some communities, we have very low school enrollment, for example. In other communities, we're seeing the loss of services, from retail services, because you can't find anybody to work there, because at that rate, getting paid at a rate that you get paid, you can't afford housing in a particular place. So you see restaurants close or shorten their hours. Anybody see that ever? You also will see things like medical facilities make economic decisions, like not having certain types of care and cutting that back. You will also see that it has an impact on the Commonwealth overall if we lose population because people leave because they can't afford it. So in our region, if we continue to have flat or declining population, we could lose some resources. We could even lose representation in the State House or in Congress in terms of the way we have it today, right? So these are, and you also lose resources that are done on a per capita basis. So there are many federal resources that are made available to the Commonwealth on a per person basis. So if your population declines because you don't have the housing stock to both retain, maintain, and grow that population, there are real downside implications. But there are huge opportunities as well. And Easthampton has availed itself of some of those opportunities, rethought about what you wanted to do with your schools. When you built a new school, you're now repurposing the older schools for housing, and that's tremendous. There are other opportunities that other communities are availing themselves with. We're doing a project in Amherst where the town took a surplus school and bought some land, and we're going to build 78 units across 2 different sites that will be affordable at different income levels for people in that community. So there's real agency that communities have. There's real action that you can take to help create the environment where you can build more housing to sustain your community and even grow your community in a healthy way. And all of us can take action on that. And I'll turn it over to Matt before I keep rambling on.
Thanks, Keith. First of all, I want to thank everyone for having me out here today. It was wonderful to make the trip from Boston. I am a former 2-year resident of Sunderland, and so I can feel myself exhale when I got outside of 128 and kind of relax a little bit. So I work for CHAPA, Citizens Housing and Planning Association. Keith is one of our board members. We're so fortunate to have him. And you've heard a lot today about the need, about some of the services that are right here out in the Pioneer Valley, and I want to talk a little bit about the opportunity that we have to advocate. And we have a moment right now where we have several things coming together, and we have a sprint that will happen from now until July 31st, the end of formal sessions of the legislature. And I know that Senator Vilas is here and Rep. Carey is here, and so I've got specific action items that you all can take with both of them coming out of here. You've heard the 200,000 number. We need 200,000 new homes in Massachusetts over the next 10 years. It's not enough to have those be 200,000 McMansions. That's not going to solve our problem. Of those 200,000, at least 40,000 of them have to be affordable. An additional 20,000 need to be affordable to folks with extremely low incomes. That's 30% of area median income and below. And of those 20,000, 10,000 of them need to be supportive housing units, services attached to maintain housing for folks who need it. It's a really daunting number and a really high bar that we need to meet over the next 10 years. We have 2 pieces of legislation that are actively moving right now and will be passed between now and the end of July that we have the opportunity to shape and really lay the groundwork to make that happen. The first is the Affordable Homes Act. You've heard that talked about several times right now. Affordable Homes Act, the housing bond bill. Every 5 years, the state passes a bill that gives the state the opportunity to borrow money for bricks and mortar, shovels in the ground to build housing. We need that funding, we need that borrowing authority in order to build the housing. And that was happening right now. The bond authorization from the previous bill is about to run out. We're going to pass a new bond bill. Governor Healy introduced the Affordable Homes Act back in October with a $4.1 billion level for borrowing authority for the state. The previous bond bill, which is the highest before that, was $1.8 billion. So that really recognizes the importance of the bond bill. Attached to that, in addition to the borrowing authority, are a lot of policy programs, which is different this time. Most of the time, the bond bill doesn't have policies attached to it. One of the things that was mentioned earlier was ADUs by right, accessory dwelling units by right. I'm so happy to be aware of the fact that Easthampton, Northampton has that in as part of your zoning here. That's so important. We're hearing some of my friends in Eastern Mass think that the sky is falling if we allowing ADUs by right. You should hear the stories that we're getting about the fear out there. So if you have the opportunity to talk to your folks in Eastern Mass, let them know that in fact the ADUs are a good thing. It's an important tool to maintain housing, to provide more housing opportunities. So that bill right now is moving. It is in the House Ways and Means Committee, and you could maybe ask Rep. Carey if that's going to move. We're hearing that might come out of House Ways and Means this week and could potentially be on the floor of the House as early as next week. A lot of really important opportunities to advocate in that. So when that comes out, take a look at CHAPA's website, see what's in it, see what's important for this part of the state in there to make sure that the entirety of the state is represented in there. The other opportunity that's moving right now is the annual operating budget. Every year, the state has to pass a budget that they spend over the next year. So this is actually money that goes out just within the following 365 days. So the Senate right now, the Senate Ways and Means Committee reported out their operating budget for FY25 last week. This is sort of the little calm before the storm as the Senate considers their amendments. I didn't do the count on amendments. I know in the House it was nearly 1,500 amendments, so there's a lot of them. I would imagine it's going to be something close to that in the Senate, but a lot of opportunities to improve that bill with the spending. I'm incredibly pleased to say that even though that we have challenging fiscal times, those of you who've seen declining revenues, the reports in the newspaper, the legislature has recognized the importance of housing, and housing has not been hammered in this budget, which is a really good thing. We're seeing a lot of increases in certain accounts. Of course, there's always opportunities to do better, and that's what some of the amendments are we're going to advocate for in the budget, but that's another thing that you can talk to Senator Vilas about, as that bill will come to the floor next week. That bill has to be passed by the end of June. So a lot of opportunities that we have between now and July 31st. The state budget has to be done by June 30th, bond bill by July 31st. So that's my little spiel right now, and I will back off and happy to answer.
I was just going to jump in on that. Why does that matter to you, right? We hear about, this bill, that bill, and Matt didn't cover it in some way, but I'm going to point to two programs that we run. That you can talk to my colleagues over there why it matters. In the operating budget, there's a program called the Residential Assistance for Families in Transition. That's our emergency financial assistance program for people who are having trouble paying the rent or paying the mortgage or paying their utilities for low-income people. Okay, that's in that operating budget, the annual budget. Okay, so it's really important. It's called RAFT, Residential Assistance for Families in Transition. So key to show up for RAFT because that helps so many families. And during the pandemic, that program grew to really help meet the need. We were always running out of money every year with that program. It was a small program, never meeting the need. Now we've grown it, and we need to keep it high because so many people are having a hard time affording their homes and running into challenges that gets you into needing to be in the tenancy preservation program, which you heard about earlier. So RAFT can be a nice complement to that program. The other thing that my colleagues can talk to you about over there is a home modification loan program, which is to make health and safety improvements. That's in the bond bill. Okay, that gets funded in the bond bill every year. And that's for people who are trying to age in place, live in their homes, and they need to make improvements so they can do so. And so the home modification loan program basically gives you a zero interest loan that you only pay back when you sell your home. Okay, so these are opportunities that are right before us. That this thing you say, so what? What about that bill? These are some so whats in terms of if we don't have those resources, the impact that it could have for our communities. So it's important to show up for housing, to let Senator Vilas and Rep. Carey are big supporters of those programs already and knowledgeable about them. But we got to show up for housing in lots of different ways on the operating and the capital side.
And if I could just piggyback on that really quickly, on the RAFT program, really pleased that there was a funding increase over the previous fiscal year. There's also an amendment that was filed in the budget to improve the operation of that program, and that's certainly something that you can speak to Senator Vilas about co-sponsoring, and I can get the amendment number for you after this. I don't have it on the top of my mind right now. One
other thing where you can show up for housing is one of the things that the governor did is a series of executive orders. One was creating two councils. One, your great mayor is on housing production, and the other one I'm on, which is around creating a 5-year housing plan. Guess what? We don't have a housing plan. We have a 5-year economic development plan, But we don't have a statewide housing plan. But this government, and we haven't for 40 years. There haven't been a major statewide planning effort, okay? So we're doing that effort now to do it every 5 years to coincide with the bond bill and the operating budget opportunities so that we can think about not only acting in response to what, or reacting to what's happening to us, but actually planful and prospectively acting to create the housing we need for all of our communities. So I mentioned that because they are doing statewide listening sessions and they're bringing it to our region. There are 2 more left in our region, unfortunately, they're this week, or fortunately for you, they're this week, depending on what your schedule looks like. Tomorrow, no, is it tomorrow? I'm just checking. No, not tomorrow. See, you got a couple more days. Wednesday, there's one in the Berkshires. So if you're so inclined for a little drive, you could go to the Berkshires. And that's at Berkshire Community College at 1:30. But on Thursday, as Jana said, is at Greenfield Community College, a statewide housing listening session. And that's to inform the 5-year housing plan for the state. So if you have the time, you can go to that listening session, and they want to hear from all sorts of people. I went to one a week or 2 ago down in Springfield, and there are a range of people there, from everyday citizens to people who do housing as a profession like me, to people who worked in from all walks of life. So they want to hear from us about what needs to be in that plan.
And I'll just say that they really want to hear from Western Massachusetts. So sometimes folks in Boston, lots of things, housing funding, housing policies are really designed by people who are in Boston. And we are in Western Mass. Western Mass is a little bit different. So it's important that they're having these listening sessions out here in Western Massachusetts because they want to hear from us who live in a more rural part of the state, that it's not the same as building housing in Greater Boston. That's my quick plug on that.
Can I just say more about that?
Sure.
So, and relevant to the Affordable Homes Act, we have been working with colleagues throughout the region, the planning commissions, other nonprofit affordable housing developers, cities and towns, through something called the Western Mass Housing Coalition, to help inform that bond bill, that Affordable Homes Act, to make sure it works for us. So some things that don't work for us today are some of the minimum size requirements for some projects. You have to create at least 10 units of projects in the Commonwealth Builder program, which is to build affordable homes. We think that needs to be lifted for us because 10 units don't always work in our communities. In other cases, we think there are programs that their thresholds need to be lowered, like the transfer fee. There's a local option transfer fee, which would create new local revenue to support housing development. But the sale, it only has, it's caps at supporting $1 million home sales, essentially. We don't have many $1 million home sales. So we need to lower that and make that flexible to work for us here in Western Massachusetts if we're going to use a resource. So those are some examples of where, good idea, but it doesn't really work for us unless we modify it. So that's one of the things we've been doing through the Housing Coalition and sharing that with our delegation. These are the things that we need to see modified so they can actually work for us, so they can help meet our need here in our region.
In a few minutes, you're going to hear from me about all the exciting things happening in Easthampton. But I thought it might be helpful, as both Matt and Keith have talked about, all the money that might be available to build more housing, and we need more housing. And then concisely, because it's not a very concise answer, why does it take so long to build affordable housing? And why is it so, can we talk a little bit about all the different, why is it more complicated to build affordable housing than it is to build market rate housing? You can put up a couple single family homes in a few months. You cannot do that with affordable housing. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Just a little?
In the next 5 minutes.
Well, so to give you a sense, so you were saying just a few months to build market rate housing, and there's not that much market rate housing it seems like there is, but there really isn't that much being developed. And usually in a market rate housing project, there are just a couple of sources of funding. Someone might go to the bank and get a loan. They might put some of their equity or their own money or somebody else's money in it, and they finance it and they sell it or rent it at very high amounts in order to pay that back. Affordable housing is income restricted housing, and so we don't have the income to pay back loans like that. So we need to get resources from state and local and federal government. So there are application processes that we must go through. Often it takes us, when we are building an affordable housing development like Parsons Village or like the one in Amherst, it might take us a couple of rounds of applying for that. That means a couple of years just to apply to get some of the funding. There's also a lot of local processes that we have to go through. And so you can get all this money from the state with the Affordable Homes Act. That's terrific. We're incredibly grateful to the governor for making housing her #1 priority and putting out what would be a generational investment in $4.1 billion. But it all stops right here at the local level if we don't have communities set up to work with housing developers to move those projects quickly through the process. People talk about time is money, and time in housing is really money. It takes us, we used to say it would take us 3 to 5 years from acquiring a site to it being open. Now, unfortunately, we say it takes more like 6 to 8 years. And during that time, housing need is not getting met. But during this last period, housing costs to build housing have increased incredibly. So there are real implications to that at the local level, going through many approval processes. If they're not done efficiently, and a lot of towns don't have planners, you have more capacity here in Easthampton than a lot of other communities, it can really slow it down. And so that can be a big process. Some towns have town meeting. That may not always be the most efficient process to moving through a housing development. Good for representative government, but not necessarily good when you're trying to create something like housing that's in such dire need. So those are a couple of reasons why it takes so long time.
All right, we only have a couple minutes left. Is there anything else, Matt or Keith, you want to mention?
I think we talked about a lot of it, but I just want to reemphasize the moment that we're in right now. I was telling Keith earlier, I worked in affordable housing advocacy about 17 years ago and moved and worked in some other issue areas in the interim. And coming back into it, I'm really struck by how much more focus there is. When I worked in affordable housing the first time around, we were struggling to get the attention of the general public, of the legislature. And now we've got a governor who is putting so much more emphasis on it. We've got a legislature who's laser focused on it. We really have a moment and an opportunity that we can't afford to let go by right now. And so it's so important that all of you speak up. This is the moment when we can really get a lot done and move forward.
I think that's a nice segue from what my remarks, which is also to let everyone know this is a really exciting moment in Easthampton. So we have a lot going on in affordable housing. Haley mentioned earlier something called a housing production plan, and Keith was just saying how the state doesn't have a housing plan. Easthampton has a housing plan. We have had a housing production plan, I think, since 2008. Our current plan was recently updated in 2021. The housing production plan is actually a state approved plan. I was going to say regulated, but it's not really regulated. And basically, the housing production plan does a needs assessment of the city of Easthampton, of the types of housing that we need. And then it lays out goals and strategies of how we can get there. As I mentioned before, I'm the chair of Easthampton's Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. We are an advisory committee to the city. We are appointed by the mayor. Our job is to promote and preserve affordable housing in Easthampton. We use the housing production plan as our to-do list. I'm joined here by Lindsay Rothschild, one of our members. And we use the housing production plan as our to-do list. What are the things that we want to work on? How do we want to advance the goals of producing more affordable housing in Easthampton? And we have so many things going on. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the 4 projects that we have in the works. One of them is called One Industrial Lofts. This is over on 11 Ferry Street. So this is part of the One Ferry Street development that's been going on for several years. Originally, we did not think that there was going to be any affordable housing in that development, but I'm very excited that the developer has decided to build 96 units of affordable housing. It's at 11 Ferry Street. There will be 5 market rate apartments, and the rest will be affordable for folks either at 60% of the area median income or 30% of the area median income. I'm not going to get into, maybe that'll be a question during the Q&A lightning round about what the area median incomes are, and I'm happy to talk about it later, but it's a little complicated. But those units that are below 30% of the area median income, those are the units we really need. Those are the units that are serving our lowest income residents in Easthampton, and those are the units that we really need across the state, and particularly here in Easthampton. Another project that you might all be familiar with is called Sierra Vista Commons, and this is the development that's at the former Tasty Top parcel. How many of you know about this project? Yes, this was a very popular project to talk about for a long time. Going back to what Keith mentioned about why it takes so long for affordable housing to develop, this project went through the permitting process for 1 year. It applied for its permit in November of 2022 and did not get its permit until November of 2023. That means there were months and months and months of public hearings. We're getting comment, which is great, but that is time and money for the developer. That attorney that had to show up every time, adds to the cost of building affordable housing. That is a phased project and is a mixed-use project. So as many of you probably remember, it will have a restaurant pad, it will have a bank, it will have a gymnastics studio, it'll have a daycare, and it'll have about 10 buildings for housing. A total, I think, it took me a while it went back and forth a little bit, about 208 units. The first phase of the project with housing will be all affordable units. There'll be 54 affordable units. And that project will go on probably for 10 years. So there will be lots of development happening there. It will not all happen at once. The next project that someone else, I think Matt mentioned, or maybe Keith, we have our elementary schools, Maple Center and Pepin schools, will be rehabilitated for affordable housing. This was a huge investment by the city of Easthampton, and we should all feel very proud that our city just looked at these 3 vacant school buildings and made an investment that they wanted those units to go to affordable housing. So the city issued what's called a request for proposals for developers back in 2022. This was after an 18-month planning process for figuring out what did the city want to see in those buildings. They received 3 proposals and chose Arch Communities to be the developer, and that was approved by City Council back in May of 2022, I think. I'm getting my years mixed up. I have 1 more minute. And that will have 61 units. That is not under construction. So that will take a little bit of time. It needs to be transferred to Arch Communities, and that developer still needs to get a permit. So there will be plenty of time for public comment during that period. Lastly, there is a new proposal for affordable housing at 385 Main Street. That is the big grassy field that has been for sale on the way to Big Y. That is from the community builders. They own College Highway Apartments, which is right next door. They have a public hearing coming up on May 29th before the Zoning Board of Appeals at 6 p.m. To build 87 new affordable housing and rehab 40 of the units at College Apartments. That also will have an enormous amount of open space because it is a partnership with the Kestrel Land Trust. So I would say for those of you who really want to advocate for more affordable housing, that would be an excellent opportunity to come to the Zoning Board of Appeals to hear some positive comments about why we need affordable housing in Easthampton. And with that, I will stop talking. I want to thank Matt and Keith very much for their time and for being up here with us today. And I will turn it back over to Cynthia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Jana. So we're going to welcome Representative Dan Carey and Senator John Vilas to the panel table. You folks can come and sit in these 2 chairs, the hot seats right here. Senator Vilas is going to talk with you a little bit about some of these legislative priorities that are so important right now. And the 2 of them care deeply about housing, about older adults, and about older adults in housing. So they were perfect to bring here today. Thank you so much, folks. And you've got about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we're gonna go right into our lightning round of questions and answers. So stay up here, and we'll bring the other folks up.
Hello. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Oh, am I going first? Go ahead, Senator. How's everybody doing today? I've got some just quick, I think the most important thing from today is probably going to be the lightning round Q&A that we do. So I want to be very brief and I want to get to that. And I think I would also point out that this very large bill that we were taking out is being referred to as the housing bond bill. And I'm not gonna speak to any date, certainly on my friend Representative Kerry's side, but suffice it to say that you're gonna take it up before we do. Yep. So just kind of by way of background where we are in state government, we in the Senate are gonna be taking up the state budget next week, whereas the House did it a few weeks ago, a month ago, and the Senate is last to go. And then we will be obviously earnestly waiting to see what, when the House does the housing bill, and then obviously we will take it up. So I guess by way of background, I would just say a couple of things that I think are really, really important. And one of them was already said multiple times, and I just want to echo that because I think it's really, really important. And I want to bring you back to a place that I was almost 8 years ago, a place that's in the news a lot right now for completely different reasons. But I was in Israel, all right? And I was at a hospital, and it was the most fascinating thing I've ever been at. It was at a hospital beneath ground in a parking garage. And I was there touring it with a bunch of my colleagues. And we were looking at this hospital, and we were talking to them about it. And one of the things that they told us is that this hospital was built out of necessity for things that they have going on in that part of the world. So anyway, here we were in this hospital in a parking garage, all being driven by generators, that they had the ability to go from this above ground hospital to this hospital in a parking garage in 24 hours. And we were kind of looking around and we were chuckling at them. And finally, one of us, and I definitely was one of the ones that asked the questions, and we were in Haifa, Israel, and I probably didn't pronounce that right. And we say, how long did this take to build and how much did it cost? And I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you the dollar amount it was, but I remember how fast it took. And it was an incredibly short process. We're talking weeks. And the price that they said, I said, no, there's no way. We all kind of laughed at them. And this is the thing that I'll never get over. They kind of looked at us and they said, yeah, this is how long it takes us to do it, and this is the cost. Because when we want to do something, we just do it. And that was really, really powerful to me. And the lesson that I took from that was this. You've already heard it said a couple times. Irrespective of everything in this housing bond bill, if from start to finish, it takes 10 years to do a project, we are never going to get out of this housing crisis that we have. Period, end of story. And I think that's really important to say. Again, irrespective of everything out there, we need to move the process along faster. And I'm going to be very clear here. The onus in doing that is on state government, it's on local government, and it's on the federal government as well as community organizations that have weighed in on these issues in such a powerful way, and then groups like the two that just spoke us before who are indispensable allies in this process. Second point I want to bring up, which was also already brought up. So I have a dear friend, colleague of mine, who is the chair of the Housing Committee on the Senate side. And she is a Boston senator, specifically East Boston. And I called her up one day and I said to her, and I was at a senior center, I was in Agawam, and I was telling her, and I was meeting with the respective housing authorities, and they were telling me the amount of time from vacancy to the amount of time that it took to actually get someone moved in to one of these affordable housing places that were available. It was years and years. And in many instances, a vacancy would go months without being filled. So I called up my friend and I said, hey, Senator Edwards, do you have this challenge in Boston? And she laughed at me. She goes, no, when we have a vacancy, she goes, we've got such a big waiting list, we just turn it right over and it's filled right away. And I said, okay, perfect. I said, I need you to come out to Western Massachusetts, and I need you to come out and I need you to do a forum, a round table out here in Western Massachusetts, because as has already been pointed out by multiple people, the housing needs in the eastern end of the state bless you, whoever just sneezed, are different from Central Mass and are most certainly different from Western Massachusetts. So you're going to hear that over and over again, and I think it's fair to say that when we engage in this housing debate in the very near future, both in the House and the Senate, there are many of us, certainly ourselves included, that are going to raise that issue. That don't assume because it's good for Dorchester, South Boston, and Worcester, that it's good for Worcester, Westfield, and Agawam. Housing challenges and needs in many instances depend on the prism from which you look at them. That's going to be the other part of this. And Keith brought up a good things, like the $1 million threshold. That's something that just does not work for Western Massachusetts. It would essentially mean we don't have anything to do. We won't benefit at all. Some of the needs, specifically in our rural communities, the bill currently as written is less than spectacular. Here's the last thing that I would say, and this has also been raised, and it was raised by the previous speakers. The moment that we are in. So I've been in politics, I've been an office holder for a few years now, as has my friend to my right. And what we will both tell you, and I'm going to confidently say this for him, he doesn't even have to say it. And he gets nervous anytime I say that. You can't have a conversation today with anyone in our line of work about challenges facing Massachusetts and beyond without one of, if not the first word, being housing. You just can't have it. And that is a marked change from even a few years ago. And this is where I'm going to stop attributing things to him, because this is my opinion. We haven't talked about this, but I don't want to get him mad at me here. I think one of the reasons we're having this conversation, and the governor and the previous governor talked about this a lot, was that we are at a crossroads in Massachusetts right now where the competitiveness of this state, the people's ability to afford where they are, and that really goes from cradle to grave, right? All ages, is really, really being called into question. And for the first time ever, I am hearing elected officials at every level, local, state, and federal, saying if we don't do this, and moving aside federal for a second, certainly our local and state office holders and federal office holders from Massachusetts realize that if we do something about the affordability of housing, it just cuts our competitiveness right in half and makes Massachusetts a less and less affordable place, and therefore a place that many people, even if they want Massachusetts to continue to be their home, it just simply can't. The moment is more so than anything. And obviously we can talk about what's in this bill. And the last thing that I would say, and this is a conversation that I have, and I don't know if the mayor is still here, but I want to shout the mayor out, because, Mayor, you still here? No? Okay. You know, Mayor LaChapelle, there have been any number of we have had on this conversation in Easthampton, on housing in particular. And the mayor, many of those meetings were driven by the mayor asking for those meetings to have them. And I think that's really, really important, because one thing that nobody likes to talk about, we have to talk about, right? Because in Massachusetts, like everywhere probably in this world, there is this phenomenon known as NIMBYism. Not in my backyard. Everybody realizes that we have a housing crisis. But then when you start to talk about what can we do and what this impact will be on our local community, that's when you start to see a complete divergence in what people are willing to do in their communities, and a big part of it was referenced from Keith about, and this is where the impact of our local partners really, really, really comes in. And if anybody doesn't think that's an issue, I would just bring your attention to what's happening right now in the eastern end of the state with the MBTA Communities Act right now, where many communities are outright defying, and that might be a strong word, but it's the word that I would attribute it to, what state law is. We can't get out of this housing crisis that we're in if all levels of government aren't fully engaged and willing to make sacrifices. Because if we don't, we're going to be at this forum 3 years from now having this exact same conversation with the prices still going up. And lastly, 3 words: build, build, build. We don't have enough of a housing stock. If anybody wants to have that debate with me, I would love to have it, because there's just not enough housing stock. And some of this is basic economics 101, right? Demand far exceeds supply. And that's all levels of housing. And it's making it so that dream, right, that so many people have, and I would now throw in that dream, just affordable rent at an apartment, is becoming more and more elusive. So, big picture, happy to talk specifics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Vilas. He's a tough act to follow. He always has a lot to say, and I never know what he's going to say. But I have to agree. I'll start with when he spoke for me. It's exactly what I was thinking driving over here today. Campaigning for this job in 2018, I met a lot of people, and everybody's got something they care about. But knocking on doors, it was different issues at different houses, and sometimes it was housing. But right now, the conversation across the Commonwealth is all about housing. Everywhere we go, every group we talk to, it's at the top of the list. And so I think it's important for us to make sure that we're bringing what we're hearing in Western Mass to the State House. I think that's arguably the most important thing that we do. If we just have Boston making decisions for us, we're not gonna like those results. So I represent Easthampton, and I represent two and a half other towns. And Easthampton's doing a lot with the Fair Housing Committee that we heard from earlier with the mayor's office. The mayor called me last week and said, I'm sorry, we're gonna apply for some money from the federal government. We want a letter of support. We need it in 10 hours. Can you get it to us? And I said, absolutely. Let's get that done right now, because we want to make sure that we're applying for every opportunity that we can out here in Western Massachusetts. So the legislature runs on a 2-year cycle, and really it's a year and a half. All the bills get filed at the beginning of the 2 years. So last January, about 7,000 bills got filed. Then those go to 40 or 50 committees so that we can specialize on areas and really dig into the issues. All the bills have to be voted on by July 31st of the second year. That's this July 31st. That feels like tomorrow. And one of these 7,000 bills is the Governor's Affordable Homes Act. And so you hear a lot about it because we need to do something about housing. Here's something, just do it. I get that comment at every grocery store I go to. But part of our job that's so frustrating is it's a deliberately slow process. You don't want 200 new legislators every other January changing all the laws for 7.1 million people across the Commonwealth. You want it to be thoughtful. So we took the governor's bond bill, which is over $4 billion, which is over 24 policy pieces besides the money. Policy changes. It's over 120 pages. And we're digging through that, page by page, policy by policy, dollar by dollar. It went through the Housing Committee. It went through the Bonding Committee. They held public hearings. And now it's in the House Ways and Means Committee. So the next step forward from the House Ways and Means Committee is to come to the full House of Representatives. And we're pushing to have that happen sooner rather than later. Because if it's not done by August 1st, it doesn't get done this session. And we need to get it done this session. So a few of the things I wanted to touch on, you heard from Keith, you heard from Senator Vilas. You know, we sent a letter to the Housing Committee. It was signed by 16 reps and senators from the western 4 counties. And it was a laundry list of changes that outside of Western Mass maybe hadn't been thought about yet. And we worked with Keith on that, and we worked with the Western Mass Network to end homelessness, and a couple other groups to see how does this fit into what we're doing out here and the work that's already going on here in Western Massachusetts. So simultaneous, we're working on the budget. The House has already passed our budget. We've got a historic amount of support for housing in there, and that's only $1.12 billion. And now we're looking to bond an additional 4.1 or more billion dollars, because we can only do so much each year. So the 1.12 billion is the most that's ever been in that budget, and the Senate next week may add a little more to that, and then we'll work on that to get that done by the end of June. So there's a lot of things that are moving, and if you have any questions or issues or anything you want us to bring to the State House on the budget, on the bond bill, on any other policy, please reach out to our offices. That is what we're here for, and it's such an important part of our job that we want to make sure that when we're advocating at the State House, we're advocating for Western Mass and for Easthampton. I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions and continuing the conversation. Thank you to the Council on Aging for organizing this and for having us.
All right. Thank you so much, both of you. And there's a special question, I think, that you guys could answer, but I'm going to invite Lindsay Sekula, the mayor's executive assistant, up to the podium, please. She's going to guide you through the lightning round of questions. Thank you to everybody who sent in questions. We selected 5 for now. Like we said, we'll get back to you with answers about the rest. And Lindsay, here are the 5 questions. And could our panelists return to the dais? Keith, Matt, Emily, Haley, and Jana, I think we can get away without you for now. You might not fit up here.
Pull that chair over here, Lindsay.
So come on up.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lindsay Sekula, and I'm from the City of Easthampton Mayor's Office. Let's get right to it. Question 1, what do you consider affordable housing? And we're going to start with Matt for this question, and if there's any time left, we can have someone else join in.
I'm probably not the best equipped person to answer this, but one of the phrases that I heard recently was there's affordable housing and there's housing that's affordable, and it's an important distinction to make. I know that there was a standard at one time that affordability was defined as 30% of your income was going toward housing. I know that there's so many people who spend way more than that right now, and it's a real challenge to hit that. Just the way housing has gone, and wages have not kept up with that. So I think that's one way to think about it as well. What's the percentage of your income?
Anyone else want to?
As an affordable housing, developer.
No, you're going to know the answer better.
Okay. There are different sources of funding that we use to make housing affordable because it costs so much, the rents won't support building it. So we need to get subsidies from the state government, from the federal government. And in return for getting those subsidies, we have to keep the housing affordable at different income levels. So you heard Jana before talking about a project, 60% of AMI and 30% of AMI. Those are directed by the resources that we're given to build the housing. So they limit the rent or who can move into those units based upon the funding source. So there's a lot of different types of affordable housing. There's housing for extremely low-income people who are at 30% of AMI below, low-income people really at 60 or 80% and below. But as Matt was saying, when we look at housing affordability in the Commonwealth today, one of the ways we look at it is around the number of people who are what we call cost burden. They're paying more than 30% of their income for their rent or for their mortgage. And here in Western Massachusetts, that number has been on the rise for the last 5 years significantly at rates that rival Eastern Massachusetts.
And then I would just, and look, sorry. And I don't think we can look at this, as far, we can't separately silo this, right? We can't look at housing separate and distinct from anything, from other issues, from other costs. I really surprised, some might say shocked, my wife last night. I went to the grocery store for the family, and she was completely shocked. But what I would tell you is that I came back and the prices, right? Like costs. So I mean, it's one thing we can look at, and that's why I don't like. And a lot of these standards, a lot of these percentages, they're great and they're a good guidepost. But the reality is, one of the things that I hear the most about from my constituents is, whether it's the local restaurant, the grocery store, or the housing, all of these are costs that are impacting people's ability to pay their bills. So these are challenging times. And again, it's not just the housing piece. I would argue it's all these other pieces that exacerbate this challenge.
Thank you. Question 2 will be for Haley and Emily, and I'll allow you each 2 minutes to answer. What happens to those of us that have income slightly too high for income-eligible senior housing, yet can't afford assisted living and need some help?
Yeah, good question. That is exactly the precipice that many clients are in. I think some of the existing solutions and solutions that will be hopefully amplified by the passage of the Affordable Homes Act will be, we've talked a little bit about accessory dwelling units. We've talked about the various levels of housing that is supported by outside means, so that it's not just extremely low income, and at market rate housing, just the increase of stock. I've also mentioned the strategy of improving the home you're in to make it more accessible for yourself. This is something I'm thinking a lot about with my parents, and trying to help them think through making single-story living a reality in their 2-story cape. And to be honest, I feel like that's the lowest hanging fruit option that most older adults in Massachusetts have right now. I'd like to see that change. But my advice to anyone who is over income for subsidized housing of the various sorts that are available to us are to get a home modification loan, a 0% interest loan that doesn't have to be paid back until your house is sold, to make some major modifications to increase the accessibility of your house.
You pretty much said it all, but and I don't want to harp on the question before, which is affordability, but there will be some point where somebody builds affordable housing in your community and you're going to say, that's affordable? That's really expensive, right? So it is a spectrum. And there may be a point where affordable housing you actually will qualify for, because it goes, it could go up to 120% of the area median income. Median being, I always forget, median is the one who stands in the middle, half is above and half is below. That's what the median is, and there is one for every community. But I think as much as you can think ahead, if you haven't already, about where you're living and what you can bring in. Talk to the service providers that are available to people who aren't on talk to Highland Valley. They have service options for folks to come in. Think about family living, think about accessory dwelling units. I mean, my plan is to, my husband doesn't know this, my plan is to have my kids move into my house and I build an accessory dwelling unit in my backyard, so we get our garden, our dogs, and our grandchildren, all those fun things. And so there are other ways to think about things, especially since those are by right here. That's, I guess, what I would be looking at, as well as everything Haley said.
That's it. Okay, question 3. Emily, tagging you back in. Does Massachusetts and does Easthampton have home share programs like Vermont does? If so, Vermont has a 2-week trial period after being matched and screened.
No. I had to check with Haley about what was out here. So we do have, in other communities, they've brought in Nesterly, for example, and they've brought in, which is like a roommate matching program, particularly for older adults, and it sort of makes it less scary. It talks about things matches you, and it talks about things that you should think about, and it helps you with the documents and things like that. There is no state-funded home sharing. There is a lot of organic things that come together because people need home sharing. So I bet there are people in Easthampton who have opened up their home, but they just didn't do it that formally or informally. It does become a little bit tricky because you become sometimes a landlord, right? And so people don't always like to be in a landlord situation, or you want to have something that there's a little bit of bartering going on, like the person's going to get cheaper rent, and so they're going to mow the lawn, or they're going to shovel and things like that. And so my advice would be, there's nothing stopping you from doing that now. Just make sure it's written down so that it's really clear what relationship you're getting into with the person who is moving into their home. But it is something that's very common, particularly in college settings and college towns where younger people are looking for places to live with older adults. Does anybody here know somebody who shares their home? Who wants to be the first one? I bet you got some empty rooms. There you go. Reese is looking.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, 4, is for Keith. There have been many articles in the news about various housing developments, but there is never information about how to apply for the low-income housing units. Who do we call for that?
Great question. So it's often a mystery, and it's a mystery because when you drive by a housing development, they all look the same. A couple things about that. One, affordable housing is built at a very high standard today. I know it's one of the things that the Senator was talking about, NIMBYism. People think that's going to bring something bad to your community. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar investment, jobs, something that's actually going to increase property values or maintain them, not bring them down. So that's what we build today. But you wouldn't know the difference between one or the other, right? It's not a big affordable pasted on the building. In the Commonwealth, we tried to solve that. So there's something called housingnavigatorma.org. I'll say that again, housingnavigatorma.org. And if you go to that site, you'll find all the affordable housing projects in the Commonwealth, and you can search by town. You can see who has open lotteries, meaning that they're leasing up for the first time. You can see people who have waiting lists. You can see age-restricted housing. It's all there. Most of it's there anyway. And so it's been a big effort over the last several years to really daylight that information to more people, so you can use that resource. You can also call Wayfinders. We have some help around housing search for people as well, but that we're often just going to be looking at housingnavigatorma.org and saying, oh yes, you want to live in Easthampton? Oh, there's a 55 and older community here. They have a waiting list. You should get on it. Okay? Or they actually have a unit open. You might want to go call them and see if you can, and they don't have a waiting list, you might be able to get access to it. So that's the kind of information you can find at housingnavigatorma.org. Again, it was created in partnership with the state and other nonprofits identifying this kind of gap and understanding where affordable housing is.
Thank you.
A lot of people wrote that on that website.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, our last question, and we only have time for 5, and I'm going to have Senator Velas and Rep. Carey answer this one. My name came up on the Section 8 list for Amherst, but I was told I'm not eligible because I now live in Easthampton. How is that possible? Who can I talk to that can help me unravel all of the issues of Section 8?
I think, and then I would just dovetail and add my thoughts on the previous question, because I think the answer is somewhat the same. That's what we got elected to do. If you have one of these questions, if you want to navigate this process, reach out to us. Whoever your state rep is, whoever your state senator is, if they're doing their job, they're going to connect you to the proper resources. These are very complex, nuanced, overly bureaucratic agencies in many respects. And our job is to help you through that process. So I would say certainly reach out to us, and we will help you step by step through that process.
Absolutely, I can't echo that enough. And we both have staff members here, Kelly and Mark, who are helping out and listening in. And these are the types of constituent calls we get all day, every day. A lot of the times, we don't have the answer, but we know the director of the housing authority, or we know the mayor, we know the city councilor, we know the federal representative, we know who to connect you with, and we can get you streamlined to get an answer. One thing with the housing authorities, there was a change years ago, just a couple years ago, to try to make it easier, and it is having some unintended consequences that I think we're going to need to address, where people can click and pick all 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. That was a good idea to say, all right, I don't want to just put Easthampton, I want to put Easthampton, Northampton, Amherst. But the check all button has really slowed things down. Haley and I have talked about this before. And there's a couple other little things like that. So those are the kinds of issues we want to know about so that we can go back and we can fix them and not only find you your specific answer, but try to streamline the whole process as well.
And before Cindy kicks me off stage here, I also want to say that the mayor's office, we are always there Monday through Thursday to help you through email, walk-in visits, phone calls. If you don't have the information to connect with your senators or state reps, please reach out to us and we can help make those connections with you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
People were handing me questions. When I went to get these questions, people kept trying to hand me some extra questions. I've got them just because we didn't answer them now. And one was specifically for Rep. Carey, which I'll make sure he gets before he leaves office. Somebody did ask a very time-sensitive question, which is, where can I get the information for the Greenfield listening meeting? And Mark just sent me the email for that. So if you want to get that information, I'll post that on Facebook later today. I'll share that post about how you go to the GCC listening session. And I see a hand up.
Yeah, well, then just take this opportunity for people who are trying to stay at home. There's the Easthampton neighbors, and they provide errands, light chores, grocery shopping, wellness calls, rides, school appointments. Everyone has been vetted, all the volunteers. There's a website. It's
great.
Neighbors, their phone number.
Okay, so if not everyone heard that, that was a super appropriate comment, which is Easthampton Neighbors, which sometimes works in partnership with the Council on Aging, gives rides and does a lot of things as volunteers for people. Go to easthamptonneighbors.org online and you can learn more about them. And then Keith.
Thanks to Rep. Carey for this. There's the Greenfield session that's in person later this week, but there will also be a virtual session, and we'll get you that information as well. So if you don't get to participate here locally, there's a virtual opportunity. You're going to get it from Cindy.
I'll put it on Facebook, but also before you leave here today, I have the email with all the info, and I can give it to you, and you can write it down. We're the Council on Aging, also known as Senior Center. We have a very fancy long name, Council on Aging and Enrichment Center. And this is the enrichment part. I want to thank everybody who came today from Boston, from Westfield, from all over the place, from Springfield, to come to Easthampton, not just to talk about Easthampton issues to Easthampton folks, but really, I mean, we have people here from senior centers all over the valley to talk about an issue that's important for everyone. Thank you very much. We don't want to keep you too long. Please, if you are from Easthampton or you love Easthampton and you want to sign up for our picnic on June 6th from 4:30 to 6:30, please call us to register. That is so that members of Easthampton's government, city council, department heads, and others who work for your city government can grill and chill with you, so don't forget to sign up for that. The seats for that are almost gone. Thanks again, everybody, and goodbye.